Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Tim again with another cheap gear review. This time we're talking about this guy right here. It's another Monoprice item. It's a large diaphragm condenser microphone through Monoprice, part of their Pro Audio series that they've been working on and building up over the past few months. Yeah, I know it's another Monoprice thing. I promise I don't work for them. This is just the last couple purchases that I made, and I thought you guys might find it interesting. Again, there's not a whole lot of information or a whole lot of sound samples for this particular microphone online. So right now, the audio that you're hearing is actually through an Audio-Technica lavalier microphone that I'm wearing. So we'll cut to this microphone here a bit later for comparison, and we'll also compare it to some of the large diaphragm condenser microphones that I tend to use throughout the course of my voice work and podcasting and whatnot. So first things first, this thing goes for about $75 on monoprice.com. It's got your standard pad switch, so you can do a negative 10 dB pad. You know, it's got the standard high pass filter roll off switch, so you can cut the low end. Good if you want to reduce handling noise, but still want to keep that crispness in the high end. It comes with its own shock mount, which is a nice thing there. Unlike some of my other microphones, it did not come with its own case or bag. Rather, it came with this cardboard box that happens to have foam cutouts. So I kept the box, needless to say. This is the box that came in shipping. And I figured the foam cutouts are nice. That would be good if you wanted to adapt a different case to fit this microphone. But ultimately, you're probably going to end up tossing that anyway. So that is what it is. But that's not the main event anyway. The main event is the sound. Okay, now we're running on just this microphone here. So all of the sound that you hear right now is coming through this microphone, through this also Monoprice gold-plated XLR cable, into a Yamaha MG series mixer directly into my computer. And so this is a good example of, you know, the audio more or less unmolested. I put a little bit of compression on there on the board because it's got, you know, decent enough compression. And, you know, really it's just that little bit of compression. That's all you hear. There's no EQ, nothing like that. You'll hear there's a little bit of smearing in the high end. So just a little bit there. It's almost like you have a de-esser engaged or something like that. It could be that I'm used to a brighter microphone, because one of the microphones that we'll see in just a moment is a Studio Project C1, which is, you know, in a lot of circles actually decried for being too bright. But it seems to even be a little bit smeary compared to like my Studio Project's B1, which is the main vocal mic that I use. Now, I did use this on a couple of voiceover projects, and both on my voice and my fiance's voice, who also does voice work, it seemed to work brilliantly. This isn't the cheapest large diaphragm condenser that I've seen out there. You normally would find them between, $50 and as much as you want to spend, but $50 seems to be the low point. This being $75, it's a little bit higher quality than some of the USB mics that you might find that are also large diaphragm condensers. I mean, this is a good old-fashioned XLR, and it's also going to be just a tiny bit higher quality than some of the really, really cheap, like Nady microphones that you might find for that price point. Let's go ahead and compare this to the Studio Project's B1 and then the C1. So first up is the Studio Project's B1. So again, this right here, this sound being the Monoprice, keep this in your mind, put it in your lockbox, and we'll come back to this here in a bit. So first, the Studio Project's B1. So this is the Studio Project's B1. I bought this many years ago at a local music shop. I do believe nowadays this model goes for anywhere between $100 and $125. This particular version of it doesn't have anything like a roll-off switch or a pad or anything like that. It's very bare bones, but it does have a very even response. Now, the literature at the time said it had included shock mount, like an internal shock mount, which is why it only came with a microphone clip. I don't trust it. I take that with a big bowl of salt. So that's why I'm using the shock mount from the Studio Project C1 that I'll discuss here in just a bit. That being the case, you can hear how my voice sounds through it. And so let's go ahead and finish up the comparison by going back to the Monoprice mic and then to the Studio Project C1. And so that was the Studio Project's B1. As you can hear, it's got a very even response. I feel like it suits my voice quite well. Back when I bought it several years ago, as evidenced by the dent on the top, it went for about $80, so about the same as this. It is important to note it did not come with a shock mount, and it did come with a microphone bag, but not an actual case like the C1 we'll look at here in a second. That was, again, through the same cable, through the same preamp channel on my audio board, and with the same level of compression, and the only effect placed on it was that compression at the board level. Moving on, here's the Studio Project C1. This big guy here is a Studio Project C1. It's a $200 microphone. I got it before I recorded our first full-length album. Used it for vocals on that. Used it for quite a few other music tracks, quite a few voiceovers. I used it on just about every podcast. Somebody's got it. Normally I use it with the windscreen or a pop filter or both. And I also like to cut the high-end EQ in post. Because in some circles, this thing sounds shrill. And a lot of times if I'm putting it into a mix, I really don't want the high-end to stand out that much. I don't need this to sound like NPR. And so the first thing you should hear is how much brighter this sounds compared to the other two microphones, at least so long as YouTube's compression hasn't gotten to it. Like the Monoprice microphone, this does have a 10 decibel pad switch, and it does have a low-end roll-off to reduce handling noise. It also came with its own shock mount, which I'm using right now, and I used on the Studio Project's B1 demonstration earlier. So this is how my voice sounds through this microphone. That's over twice the price of the Monoprice mic. You can hear the high end is very clear, but also very, very there. That said, let's go back to the Monoprice mic and wrap things up. And so that was the Studio Project C1. Now you'll hear there was quite a bit more high-end on that. And of course this is going through the same board, same cable, same preamp channel on the board, same exact gain settings, same compression. Everything was equal, so you really hear the difference in the response curve. Now, I do recommend viewing this video on the highest level possible in YouTube to get the truest sense of the audio there, because I notice on like 360p, it'll cut the high end anyway. You might not hear what I'm talking about. And also bear in mind that this is just with my own voice. Your voice will sound different through any of these microphones. That's just the nature of the game. So I'd recommend checking these out on your own as well. If you have access to any of the Studio Project's mics, those are great. This one I wouldn't be embarrassed whipping it out of professional function, because for $75, it gets the job done. It sounds good. I've used it on a couple vocal projects already. And, you know, honestly, it doesn't sound really that much worse to my ear. And in a mix, yeah, it might actually sound better. It might actually fit the mix a little bit better than, say, the C1, which in some circles is considered shrill. So while your mileage may vary, if you have the opportunity to check it out, it's $75 that I feel would be well spent. And hey, while it doesn't come with a robust case, it does come with its own shock mount, and that I feel is pretty cool. So they certainly didn't have to include that, and it was a welcome surprise as far as I was concerned. That said, until next time, I'm Tim Lyons, signing off.